Maybe your words make sense. I could be the problem, I'm so sorry. I know we can just be friends, but I don't.
This is Liam Payne's last moment. Not the last breath or the final headline, but the final feeling that clings to a room after the cameras stop and the lights calm down. You know, the kind of silence that hums after a stadium roars. That hush where you can hear your own thoughts, and they are honest in a way that terrifies you a little. Liam lived inside that contrast. One day it was the thunder of arenas with One Direction, 5 young blokes learning to steady their feet while the world moved too fast. The next it was a smaller stage, a studio light flickering over a laptop, a melody looping, a voice note saved at 2 in the morning because sleep would not arrive on cue. In public he was bright, cheeky, good at playing to the back row, the kind of charisma you feel even through a phone screen. Off stage he was more layered, a careful thinker, sometimes second-guessing himself, sometimes just needing a mate to say it will be fine. The truth is, fame comes like a rip current. It looks inviting, it looks simple, but it drags hard, and the swim back takes grit most of us never have to find. Liam kept swimming. He tried new sounds, took the hits and the misses, showed up at award nights with that half-smile Australians call a brave face, and he kept talking about doing better, being better, loving better. If you listen closely to the later tracks, you can hear a man trying to pull sunlight through a narrow window. Not perfect, never pretending to be, just human in that raw way we recognize on our own quiet nights. This story is not a scandal reel. It is a map of pressures and promises, of friendship and distance, of a boy band brotherhood that never really disappears no matter where life flings you. And it is about the cost of chasing the loudest dream in the room. If his music or his moments meant something to you, stick around. Share your memory in the comments. Hit subscribe if you want more stories told gently, and tell me the song that still finds you on a rainy drive home. We are going to step through the noise and sit with the person. When Liam stepped out from the shadow of One Direction, the world didn't exactly give him time to breathe. Everyone had an opinion, right? About what his music should sound like, who he should date, how he should act. It's strange, you know, how people forget there's still a bloke underneath all those headlines. I think Liam felt that weight more than he ever let on. He wasn't just trying to make a career on his own, he was trying to figure out who he was when no one was calling his name every 5 minutes. There's this kind of loneliness that hits after fame, not the type where you're physically alone, but where every room feels like a performance. Every smile feels rehearsed. And that was the kind of loneliness that quietly followed him. He used to say that music saved him, and maybe it really did. Late nights in the studio, layering vocals until the sun started to peek through. It wasn't about chasing another hit anymore, it was about getting back to something honest. His songs in those last years were softer, more reflective. You could hear it in tracks like Teardrops, that sense of someone trying to let go of everything heavy, but not quite managing to. There's a vulnerability there that's easy to miss if you only look for the pop star, the celebrity. But if you actually listen, really listen, it's like he's speaking to himself, trying to convince his own heart to stay a little longer. And then there was the relationship with Cheryl and their son, Bear. That's the part people tend to forget when they're talking about chart numbers or streaming counts. Liam was a dad before he was ready for the quiet. He spoke about wanting to be a good father, to give his son what he never had growing up: stability, time, warmth. But life doesn't always line up neatly with those intentions. Touring, recording, trying to hold yourself together while being watched by millions, it's a balancing act that breaks even the strongest sometimes. Still, he showed up. He talked about Bear with that kind of gentle pride you can't fake. It's the part of him that felt the most real, the most grounded. As the years rolled on, he seemed to be searching for something beyond the fame. Maybe peace, maybe purpose. There were moments when he'd disappear for a while, go off grid, then suddenly pop up again with that familiar grin, pretending everything was fine. But if you looked closely, the smile didn't always reach his eyes anymore. Friends said he was still full of jokes, still the first to make someone laugh, but quieter when the crowd thinned out. That's what fame does, it teaches you to perform even when your heart's tired. His move to Buenos Aires was meant to be a restart, a change of scenery. He talked about wanting space to write, to think, to slow down a little. South America had always loved him, and the plan was to record there, soak in some new energy. Had been sober for a while, working on himself, doing therapy, staying connected with people who genuinely cared. For a moment, it looked like he was really turning a corner, and in a way, he was. The pictures from those last weeks show him smiling again. Genuinely smiling, surrounded by music gear, scribbling notes on a pad, humming under his breath. That's the version of Liam that deserves to be remembered. Not the headlines, not the noise, but the man quietly trying to rebuild himself one verse at a time. When you think about it, it's almost poetic. The boy who once sang to the world, trying to find his own tune again. Maybe that's why so many people still feel connected to him. Because behind all the fame, he was just another soul trying to make sense of the mess and find a bit of peace. In Buenos Aires, things seemed calmer for Liam. The city has that strange rhythm. Loud streets, yet pockets of quiet where time slows down. Head found a small apartment with a view of the river. Nothing fancy, but it had light in the mornings, and that was enough. People close to him said he was writing again, sometimes staying up until dawn just to capture a line or a feeling before it slipped away. That's the thing about artists. They feel everything more deeply. The highs, the lows, even the silence, carried all of it, sometimes too much. And while to the outside world it looked like he was healing, inside he was still fighting the same invisible battle, the one fame never prepares you for. He talked often about wanting balance to live without being chased by expectations. He wasn't chasing charts anymore, not trying to prove anything. He just wanted to be content. But contentment is hard when your life's been defined by noise. Imagine going from sold-out arenas to quiet mornings where no one's waiting for you to perform. It sounds peaceful, but for someone who's lived in the spotlight since his teens, that quiet can feel almost cruel. It forces you to listen to the echoes in your own head. And Liam, like so many others who've grown up too fast, had plenty of echoes. He started connecting again with the old 1D boys. A few messages here and there, checking in, sharing memories. There was talk, whispers even, about a possible reunion down the line. Not for fame, but just for closure, for brotherhood. They'd all walked through the fire together, after all. And even though they'd gone their separate ways, that shared history never really disappears. It sits under the surface, waiting for a reason to resurface. Niall was the one Ha'd reach out most often, sending funny memes, voice notes, the kind of small gestures that meant everything. Harry sent a message too, something short but warm. They'd always had mutual respect, even when the press tried to pit them against each other. But what people didn't see was how much pressure still lingered. Every step Liam took, every new song, was compared to what he did a decade ago. It's exhausting living under that kind of microscope. And when he finally took a step back, the industry barely noticed. That's the part that hurts the most, to give so much of yourself to something that moves on the moment you stop performing. Yet, somehow, he never became bitter. He still spoke about gratitude, about learning, about trying again, that humility was rare. And it's one of the reasons fans still feel such affection for him. There's a story one of his close friends shared about a night in Buenos Aires when Liam sat on the balcony with his guitar, playing softly into the dark. The city was alive below, but he was somewhere else in his mind, humming an old tune from the early days. His friend asked what he was thinking, and Liam just smiled, said, "It's weird you spend your life chasing noise. And then one day all you want is quiet." That line stayed with me. Because it captures the whole arc of his journey, from chaos to calm, from spotlight to solitude. He recorded voice notes during that time. Little snippets, melodies, half-written lyrics. One of them leaked online months later, just a rough demo, his voice raw and unpolished. It wasn't meant for release, but fans shared it like a treasure. The lyrics were simple, something about finding peace in small things, about holding on even when it feels like everything's slipping. It felt like a goodbye, though maybe he didn't mean it that way. It was just him, being honest, no filters. And that honesty hit people harder than any polished track ever could. There's something almost fragile about those last weeks. He looked healthier, was talking about plans, maybe a documentary, maybe a charity project for mental health awareness. Friends said he sounded clearer, more present. Had been sober for months, hitting the gym again, even laughing more. But healing isn't a straight line. Some days you feel brand new, others the old weight creeps back in. That's the part outsiders never understand. You can be smiling in photos and still be fighting a storm no one else can see. When the news eventually broke, the world froze. Not because people didn't know Head struggled, but because everyone thought Head finally turned the corner. It didn't seem real. For a whole generation who grew up with One Direction, Liam was part of their teenage soundtrack. His voice, steady, comforting, had been there through heartbreaks, graduations, first loves. To lose that suddenly was like losing a piece of memory itself. Fans gathered online, posting old clips, sharing lyrics that now felt prophetic. "You and me got a whole lot of history." The line hit differently now. Tributes poured in from every corner of the world. Old bandmates, fellow artists, people who had barely met him but still felt his impact. And through all of it, there was one common thread: gratitude. Gratitude for the music, for the laughter, for the humanity he showed even when life wasn't kind. In the end, that's what people remembered. Not the fame, not the gossip, but the feeling. The warmth. The imperfection that made him one of us. The days that followed were heavy, even for people who had never met him. Social media turned into a sea of memories, clips from concerts, shaky videos from fans who had once screamed his name in crowded arenas, photos of Liam laughing mid-song, those little half-smiles that now felt like small heartbreaks frozen in time. There was something surreal about it all. Had been such a constant figure for so long that the idea of him being gone just didn't sink in. It was like the world refused to believe it. In the UK, radio stations started playing One Direction songs on loop, each one introduced with soft-spoken tributes from DJs who had watched the boys grow up in front of microphones, and then came the BRIT Awards. The entire event paused for a moment that no one will forget. The screen went black, and then his face appeared, that familiar grin, those brown eyes that carried both mischief and depth. A montage began to roll, blending One Direction footage with clips from his solo career. There was a hush across the room, a rare kind of silence that you could almost feel. Jack Whitehall's voice cracked slightly as he spoke about Liam's impact, about the generation that found their voice through his. Then Louis, Niall, Harry, and even Zayn, though not together, each shared a few words that hit like quiet thunder. Louis spoke about brotherhood. Niall said something about laughter, about how Liam's humor kept the group afloat during their hardest days. And Harry, in his understated way, said simply, he had the biggest heart, that was enough. Because everyone knew it was true. The performance that followed, a stripped-down version of Little Things sung by an ensemble choir, broke everyone. The camera panned across the crowd, catching tears, smiles, the kind of faces that said more than words could. It wasn't a grand farewell. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle. Just like Liam. That moment reminded people why they loved him, because he was real, messy, kind, sometimes lost but always trying to find his way back. Fame never managed to wash that away. After the Brits, fans began leaving flowers outside Abbey Road, at old tour venues, even at a small park in Wolverhampton where he used to play as a kid. There were handwritten letters, candles, drawings, and lyrics scribbled on scraps of paper. One note read, "You helped me survive my teenage years." Another said, "You never knew me, but you made me feel seen." And maybe that's the truest legacy any artist can have. Not the awards, not the headlines, but the invisible comfort they leave behind in strangers' lives. Back in Buenos Aires, local fans organized a small vigil near the river. Dozens of people turned up with guitars and sang softly into the night. Someone played Teardrops, and for a few minutes, the sound of voices carried through the warm air. It wasn't a concert. It was a thank you. A quiet promise that his music would still be heard, that his story wouldn't just fade away. In the months that followed, people began revisiting his interviews, moments that once seemed ordinary but now felt full of hidden meaning. There was one where he said, "I just want to be remembered as someone who cared." Simple words, but now they hit differently. And honestly, he got his wish. You can't scroll through a tribute thread without seeing someone talk about how kind he was, how he'd stay after shows to chat, how he remembered small details about fans. Even in a world that often chews up its idols, Liam never stopped being a person first. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, lawyers and family were sorting through the practical things: estates, rights, unreleased songs. Cheryl stepped up quietly, not for the cameras, just to make sure Bear's future was secure. She released a short statement that said everything and nothing all at once about love, about gratitude, about raising their son to know who his father truly was. It was dignified, and it was painful. You could feel the respect between them, even after everything. Then came whispers of a final project, an unfinished album filled with rough demos Liam had recorded in the months before. A producer who had worked with him said the songs were the most honest he'd ever written. There's one track that reportedly begins with him humming, followed by the line, "I am learning to breathe again." It hasn't been released yet, but people already talk about it like it's sacred. Maybe one day the world will get to hear it. Or maybe it will stay private, something only a few people ever listen to. Either way, the thought of it brings a strange kind of comfort that somewhere, his voice still exists, caught between notes, living on tape. As time moves, the noise fades, but the echo of Liam's story remains. It's not a tale of tragedy, though it has sadness in it. It's a reminder of how human, even the brightest stars really are. How behind the perfect lighting and rehearsed answers, there's always a person just trying to find peace. And maybe that's why his story stays with us, because it reminds us to check in on people, to be kind, to listen a little closer. Because sometimes, the ones who make the world sing are the ones who most need someone to sing back to them. It's been months now, but the feeling hasn't really faded. You still see his name trending from time to time, usually when someone stumbles across an old interview or when a lyric from one of his songs suddenly hits harder than before. There's something timeless about that kind of connection. How one person's story can linger long after they're gone, quietly shaping the way people think, love, or grieve. Liam Payne wasn't just a celebrity, he was a mirror. A reflection of how messy it is to grow up under the spotlight, to chase perfection, and still feel like you're never enough. And maybe that's why people still talk about him, not because he was flawless, but because he was real, in a world that rewards pretending. In Australia, radio hosts have spoken about how often they get requests for his songs now. For You plays late at night, usually requested by someone who doesn't leave their name, just a small message. For everyone still trying to heal. That's the thing about his music, it wasn't complicated, but it always found a way to say what people couldn't. Simple words, clear melodies, but with that quiet ache underneath. It's strange how you can listen to a song you've heard 100 times, and suddenly it feels like it was written for right now. That's the power of someone who wrote from a place of truth. You look at old clips of him performing live, and there's this spark in his eyes, even in the small shows. He'd joke with fans, pull faces, laugh between lyrics like he wasn't performing to them but with them. There's one video from a 2019 acoustic session that went viral again recently. He forgets a lyric halfway through, laughs, and says, "See? Still human." The crowd laughs back, and it's such a simple, beautiful moment. Because it reminds you that the stage doesn't have to be a wall. For him, it was a bridge. And that's what made him special. People say artists never really leave. Their songs become the proof that they were here, that they felt something worth sharing, and for Liam, that's true. Every lyric, every performance, Every quiet moment caught on camera, it's all a breadcrumb trail back to who he really was. The boy from Wolverhampton who dreamed big, who stumbled and got back up, who tried to be better even when the world wasn't watching. That's a legacy you can't fake. There's been talk of a tribute concert not just for fans but for mental health awareness, something in his name. A few artists who worked with him have said they'd join without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, Liam was more than the music. He was the friend who sent random texts to check in, the guy who'd make sure everyone had a drink in their hand and a smile on their face. You can't teach that kind of kindness. It's either in you, or it isn't. And he had it in him, right until the end. As the months rolled on, something unexpected happened. People began to talk more openly about their own struggles, about feeling lost, about the pressure to be perfect, about how important it is to reach out before the noise gets too loud. That's what his story did. It cracked open a conversation that had been too quiet for too long. And maybe that's the real gift he left behind. When fans light candles now or play his songs on a long drive home, it's not just about remembering. It's about honoring the small, fragile truth that he shared. That it's okay to be human, to not have it all figured out. Liam Payne's final moment wasn't just the end of a story, it was the beginning of something softer, more honest, something that might just help others keep going when the silence gets heavy. A year on, and the world still whispers his name. Not loudly, not like before, but softly, like a memory people carry in their pockets. His songs still drift through cafes, through car radios, through headphones late at night. And somehow, they sound different now. Maybe it's because people listen closer. Maybe it's because they finally understand what he was really trying to say. Every lyric feels like a message left behind, a reminder that even the brightest stars can have quiet shadows. There's this clip that keeps resurfacing online. Liam, sitting in a dimly lit studio, strumming his guitar and smiling between takes. Someone behind the camera asks him what happiness means. He pauses, looks down, then says, "It's when you stop trying to be someone else." It's such a simple sentence, but now it hits like a truth people spend their whole lives chasing. And that's what made him special. He didn't hide the cracks. He showed them, even when it scared him. That kind of honesty is rare. It's what turns a singer into something more, a voice that outlives the noise. His fans, millions of them, still gather every year, not just to mourn but to celebrate. They call it Light for Liam. At exactly 8 p.m., people around the world light candles or phone torches and play his music at the same time. From London to Sydney, Buenos Aires to Manila, for 3 minutes, the world glows softly in rhythm with his voice. It's not an organized event, no sponsor, no stage. Just love, shared across borders. Maybe that's the most beautiful part of his story, that it didn't end when the cameras stopped. It kept going in the hearts of people who saw themselves in him, the dreamer, the fighter, the boy who made mistakes, but never stopped trying to be better. And if you listen, really listen, you can still hear him in the silence after the song ends, that small echo reminding us that kindness, vulnerability, and honesty never go out of style. Liam Payne's story isn't just a goodbye. It's a reminder to keep holding on, to keep singing, even when the crowd is gone.